The alarm sounds filled the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship Void Hunter. Red lights flashed across every surface as the ship's sensors detected something that should not exist. Commander Zekthara rushed to the main display, his 4 yellow eyes wide with shock. What is happening? He demanded, his voice sharp with fear. Science Officer Veltar stood frozen at his station. His scaled hands shook as he pointed at the readings. Sir, we have detected a human warship. It appeared from nowhere. Our sensors show it sitting right in front of our fleet. The words hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Human warship. Those 2 words together meant only one thing to the Zephyrians: death. That cannot be right, Zekthara said, but his voice lacked confidence. Check the sensors again. Human ships are slow and weak. They cannot sneak past our detection systems. Veltar ran the scans 3 more times. Each time, the result was the same. A human destroyer sat in space less than 50,000 kilometers away. It was close enough to attack, close enough to destroy them all. Sir, the ship is real. It is. The USS Defiant. Class unknown, but the energy readings are off our charts? On the human ship, Captain Jake Morrison stood calmly on his bridge. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. His uniform was simple and practical, not fancy like the alien commanders wore. He watched the enemy fleet through his main screen with the patience of a hunter. Sir, they have spotted us, reported Lieutenant Amy Brooks from the tactical station. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and steady hands. Their fleet is starting to move. Looks like they are trying to spread out. Morrison nodded slowly. Good, let them panic. How many ships do we count, Amy? 312, sir. Mix of cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. They were heading straight for New Haven Colony before we showed up. The captain's face hardened. New Haven was home to 50,000 civilians. Men, women, and children who had left Earth to build a new life among the stars. They had farms, schools, and small shops. They were not soldiers. They were just people trying to live in peace. Any response to our presence? Morrison asked. They are talking to each other on all channels, sir. Lots of chatter. They sound scared. Morrison almost smiled. Good. Fear was a weapon. And right now it was working in their favor. On the Zephyrian flagship, panic was spreading. Commander Zekthara tried to maintain order, but his crew was falling apart. Everyone had heard the stories about human ships. Stories that made veteran warriors wake up screaming in the night. Double quote, sir, what are your orders? Asked Navigator Quintal, a young officer who had never seen combat. Zekthara stared at the tactical display. The human ship was alone. Just one vessel against their entire fleet. By all logic, they should attack immediately. 300 ships against one was easy math. But logic did not apply when dealing with humans. Send a message to Admiral Kreshtar. On the Iron Fist, he ordered. Tell him we have a human warship in our path. Request immediate orders. The message reached Admiral Kreshtar within seconds. He was an old warrior, scarred from dozens of battles across the galaxy. He had fought the bird-like Altarians and the crystal beings of Vega Prime. He had never lost a battle. But when he heard about the human ship, his blood turned cold. How many humans? He asked his communications officer. Unknown, sir. Standard human destroyer carries maybe 200 crew members. 200 humans. Against his fleet of 300 ships and 60,000 warriors. The numbers should have been laughable. Instead, they were terrifying. Kreshtar had been at the Battle of Rigel 7. He had watched human ships fight until they were nothing but burning hulks. He had seen humans board enemy vessels and fight hand-to-hand in the corridors. He had witnessed things that violated every rule of civilized warfare. All ships, this is Admiral Kreshtar, he broadcast to his fleet. We have encountered a human warship. All vessels are to maintain defensive positions. No ship attacks without my direct order. The order confused many of his captains. They had come to destroy a helpless colony. Now they were taking defensive positions against a single enemy ship. Captain Morrison watched the alien fleet's reaction with professional interest. They were good soldiers, he could see that. Their ships moved into proper formations without confusion. But they were also afraid. Fear made even good soldiers make mistakes. Lisa, what do you think? He asked his executive officer. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Kane stood beside his chair. She was a short woman with red hair and green eyes that missed nothing. She had served with Morrison for 3 years and trusted his judgment completely. They know who we are, sir. That is working in our favor. But 300 ships is still 300 ships. We cannot fight them all at once, Morrison nodded. We do not need to fight them all. We just need to make them think we can. The human ship hung in space like a predator among prey. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, with no bright colors or decorations. It looked deadly because it was deadly. Every line of its design spoke of one purpose: war. On the Zephyrian ships, officers stared at their screens in disbelief. How had one human ship gotten so close without being detected? Their sensors were the best in the galaxy. They could spot a small asteroid from 1,000,000 kilometers away, yet this human ship had appeared as if from nowhere. Sir, should we launch fighters? Asked the tactical officer on the Crimson Wing. Captain Nexmar shook his head. No, we wait for orders. Humans are tricky. This might be a trap. He was right to be cautious. The USS Defiant was not alone by accident. Morrison had spent weeks planning this moment. He had studied the enemy's patrol routes, their communication patterns, their habits. He knew exactly when and where to appear. For maximum psychological impact, the two forces faced each other across the void. 300 alien ships against one human vessel. The odds were impossible. The situation was hopeless. And Captain Morrison was exactly where he wanted to be. The news spread through the Zephyrian fleet like a deadly virus. Ship after ship received the same terrifying message: human warship detected. Within minutes, 300 vessels knew they faced their worst nightmare. Captain Nexmar sat in his command chair aboard the escort vessel Crimson Wing, staring at the communication from the flagship. His hands trembled as he read the words again: human warship. USS Defiant, position confirmed. Double quote, sir, what are your orders? Asked his weapons officer, a young soldier named Crickstel. Vexmar did not answer immediately. He was remembering his cousin, Vextar, who had served in the Antares campaign 3 years ago. Vextar had been a proud warrior, confident in Zephyrian superiority. He had returned from Antares broken and afraid, muttering about demons in human form. They do not fight like civilized beings, Vextar had whispered during a family gathering. They do not follow the rules of war. When their ships are damaged, they ram them into our vessels. When they are outnumbered, they attack anyway. When they are dying, they keep fighting. Vexmar had not believed those stories then. He believed them now, sir? Crickstel asked again. Load all weapons, Vexmar ordered. But do not target anything without my command, and send a message to the crew. Tell them we are facing humans. Tell them to prepare for anything. On the USS Defiant, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Kane reviewed the tactical situation with Captain Morrison. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep from the sensor stations. The crew worked with calm efficiency, showing no signs of panic despite the impossible odds. Sir, we are outnumbered 300 to 1, Lisa reported. Standard military doctrine would be to withdraw and call for backup. Morrison's weathered face showed no emotion. He had fought in 12 major battles during his 20-year career. He had seen human ships destroyed, good friends killed, and entire colonies burned by alien raiders. But he had never retreated. From a fight when innocent lives were at stake? Standard doctrine does not account for human stubbornness, Lisa, he said quietly. Besides, those colonists down there do not have time for backup. The nearest fleet is 6 days away. This colony would be ash by then, Lisa nodded. She had served with Morrison long enough to know his methods. He was not reckless, but he was absolutely determined. When he decided to fight, he fought to win, no matter the cost. What about our crew, sir? Do they know what we are facing? Morrison looked around his bridge. His officers were young, most of them in their 20s and 30s. They had trained for this moment their entire careers. But facing 300 enemy ships was beyond anything they had prepared for. "They know," he said, "and they are still here. That tells me everything I need to know about their character." On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kreshtar called an emergency meeting of his senior officers. The main conference room filled with captains and commanders, all of them veteran warriors who had fought across the galaxy. But today they looked nervous. "Report," Kreshtar ordered. Commander Zekthara stood and activated the holographic display. "One human destroyer, USS Defiant. Crew estimated at 200. Standard weapons loadout according to our intelligence files." "Standard weapons," repeated Captain Mulvera from the heavy cruiser Starbreaker. "Then why are we acting like this? Is a threat? We have 300 ships." The room fell silent. These officers had all heard the stories, but Mulvera was new to this sector. He had never faced humans before. Admiral Kreshtar stood slowly. His scarred face was grim as he looked at each officer in turn. "Captain Mulvera, how many battles have you fought?" 47, sir. I have never lost." "Good. I have fought 83 battles. I have also never lost, but I have fought humans twice. Both times I'd barely survive." The Admiral activated his personal files and projected images onto the main screen. Pictures of destroyed Zephyrian ships, twisted metal, and rescue operations filled the display. "This is what humans do," Kreshtar continued. "They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for survival. They fight for their families. They fight with a fury that defies understanding." He changed the image to show a damaged human cruiser ramming a Zephyrian battleship. This human ship had lost all weapons and life support. Any rational commander would have surrendered. Instead, they used their ship as a weapon and destroyed a vessel 10 times their size. Captain Mulvera stared at the images in shock. "But sir, that is suicide. No rational being would sacrifice themselves like that." "Exactly," Kreshtar said. "Humans are not rational when they fight. They are something far more dangerous. They are desperate." Back on the Defiant, Chief Engineer Danny Sullivan worked in the engine room, preparing the ship for combat. He was a stocky man with grease-stained hands and 30 years of experience keeping human ships running. Around him, his team checked every system twice. "Chief, the fusion core is running at optimal levels," reported Technician Mary White. "All systems are green." Danny nodded but kept working. He knew what was coming. In a few hours, maybe less, this ship would be fighting for its life against impossible odds. When that happened, every system would be pushed beyond its limits. "Mary, I want you to prepare the emergency overrides," he said. "If the captain needs more power, we are going to give it to him, even if it kills the engines. Sir, the safety protocols, forget the protocols. When humans fight, we give everything we have. That is what makes us human." On the bridge, Morrison received reports from all departments. "Weapons ready, shields at full power. All crew at battle stations." The USS Defiant was as ready as it could be. "Sir, incoming transmission from the enemy flagship," reported Communications Officer Pete Harris. "Put it through." Admiral Kreshtar's face appeared on the main screen. He was an imposing figure, tall and covered in battle scars. His 4 eyes studied Morrison with the respect of one warrior recognizing another. "Human Captain, I am Admiral Kreshtar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Withdraw now, and we will let you live." Morrison stared back at the alien commander. "Admiral, I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Fleet. You came here to attack innocent civilians. Turn around and leave, or we will stop you." Kreshtar's expression showed surprise. "Captain, you face 300 ships with one. This is not courage, this is madness." Morrison's smile was cold and dangerous. "Admiral, you clearly do not understand. Humans very well, we are always a little mad. That is what makes us so effective." The transmission ended and both fleets prepared for war. The USS Defiant fired first. Captain Morrison gave the order with calm precision, and Lieutenant Amy Brooks pressed the firing controls without hesitation. The ship's main guns unleashed a barrage of energy that lit up the darkness of space like a small sun The lead Zephyrian cruiser Stellar Fang never had a chance. The human weapons hit with such force that the alien ship's shields collapsed instantly. The hull cracked open like an egg, spilling atmosphere and debris into the void. Within seconds, 300 Zephyrian crew members were dead. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Kreshtar as he watched the destruction on his tactical display. "Our intelligence report said human weapons were primitive. How did they destroy a heavy cruiser with one shot?" His tactical officer, Commander Yexmar, stared at the readings in disbelief. "Sir, their energy output is 4 times what our files indicated. Either our intelligence was wrong, or they have upgraded their weapons significantly." The truth was simpler than either alien commander realized. Human weapons had not gotten stronger. Human desperation had made them more accurate. On the Defiance bridge, Amy Brooks was already targeting the next enemy ship. She had trained for this moment her entire career, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of space combat. The responsibility of 300 lives weighed on her shoulders with each shot she fired. "Target destroyed, sir," she reported, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Morrison nodded. "Good shooting, Amy. Next target." In the engine room, Chief Engineer Danny Sullivan pushed the ship's systems beyond their safety limits. The fusion core hummed with dangerous energy as he fed power to the weapons and shields. Warning lights flashed red across his control panels, but he ignored them. "Chief, the fusion core is running at 120%, called out. "Technician Mary White?" "The safety systems are screaming at us." Danny wiped sweat from his forehead and kept working. "Mary, safety systems are for peacetime. Right now we are at war. The captain needs power, so we give him power." The USS Defiant moved through space with deadly grace. The human ship was smaller than most of the Zephyrian vessels, but it was faster and more maneuverable. It danced between enemy fire while delivering devastating counterattacks. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge like a conductor leading an orchestra. He called out orders with calm authority while his crew responded with practiced efficiency. They had trained together for 3 years, and now that training was paying off. "Lisa, bring us around to bearing 270, he ordered. "Amy, target their communications ship." The Defiant rolled and turned, avoiding a barrage of enemy fire. The Zephyrian weapons were powerful, but they were designed for fighting other alien ships. They were not designed for hunting something as fast and unpredictable as a human warship. Commander Zekthura watched in horror as another of his ships exploded. The human vessel had appeared from behind a piece of debris, fired once, and vanished again before his gunners could respond. "They are not fighting like a warship," he told his bridge crew. "They are fighting like a predator. They strike and disappear, strike and disappear." Navigator Quintal checked his sensors again. "Sir, how are they moving so fast?" Their engines should not be capable of those maneuvers. The answer lay in the human approach to engineering. While alien ships were built for comfort and long range cruising, human ships were built for war. Every system was designed to be pushed to its breaking point. Every component was tested under extreme conditions. On the Defiant, the crew worked with quiet determination. They knew they were outnumbered and outgunned, but they also knew they were fighting for something more important than their own lives. 300 kilometers below them, 50,000 civilians were going about their daily lives, unaware that their fate was being decided in the darkness above. Dr. Helen Foster worked in the medical bay, preparing for casualties. She was a small woman with gray hair and gentle hands, but she had seen enough war to know what was coming. When humans fought, they fought until they won or died. There was no middle ground. "Doctor, we have our first wounded," reported Nurse Carl Davis as he brought in an injured crew member. Helen examined the patient quickly. "Burns from an overloaded control panel. Nothing serious. He will be fine. Give him a painkiller and send him back to his station." "Doctor, should he not rest?" Helen looked at the young nurse with tired eyes. "Carl, we are fighting 300 enemy ships with one. Every person counts. That man will rest when the battle is over." The battle continued with brutal efficiency. The USS Defiant struck again and again, each attack carefully planned and perfectly executed. The human ship used the debris from destroyed Zephyrian vessels as cover, hiding among the wreckage like a shark in murky water. Admiral Kreshtar tried to coordinate his fleet's response, but the humans were too unpredictable. Every time he thought he had them cornered, they would disappear and strike somewhere else. It was like fighting a ghost. "All ships, concentrate fire on Sector 7, he ordered. "We will overwhelm them with numbers." But when his ships opened fire, the USS Defiant was already gone. The human ship had moved to a new position and was targeting another victim. The Zephyrian shots hit empty space while another of their cruisers exploded in flames. Captain Morrison studied the tactical display with professional interest. The enemy fleet was beginning to spread out, trying to cover more area. That was exactly what he wanted them to do. "Sir, they are trying to surround us," reported Lisa Kane. Morrison almost smiled. "Let them try. The more they spread out, the easier it will be to pick them off one by one." The USS Defiant accelerated toward a group of Zephyrian destroyers. The alien ships opened fire, but their shots passed harmlessly through the space where the human ship had been a moment before. The Defiant's return fire was not so forgiving. 2 more enemy ships died in brilliant flashes of light. The human ship continued its deadly dance, striking and vanishing like a creature from a nightmare. The Zephyrians began to understand that they were not fighting a battle. They were being hunted. In the depths of space, one small human ship was systematically destroying an entire alien fleet. The impossible was becoming reality, and the legend of human warfare was growing with each enemy vessel that died. The battle had been raging for 2 hours, and the Zephyrian fleet was falling apart. What had started as a simple raid on a defenseless colony had become a nightmare of twisted metal and dying ships. The USS Defiant continued its deadly hunt. Appearing and disappearing like a ghost ship, Admiral Kreshtar stood on his bridge, watching his tactical display with growing horror. 47 of his ships were gone, destroyed by a single human vessel that refused to fight like a civilized warship. The humans were using tactics that made no sense, strategies that violated every rule of space combat. "Sir, they are hiding in our own debris field," reported Navigator Quintal, his voice shaking with fear. "They are using the wreckage of our ships as cover." Kreshtar stared at the display in disbelief. The human ship had positioned itself inside the twisted remains of a Zephyrian battleship. It was completely invisible to their sensors, hidden among the metal and electronics of their own dead vessel. "How is that possible?" he demanded. "Nothing can survive in that radiation field." "Apparently humans can, sir," Quintal replied quietly. The truth was that humans could not survive in that environment any better than the Zephyrians. But Captain Morrison had made a calculated decision. He would rather risk radiation poisoning than let the enemy fleet escape to attack the colony. It was a choice that no alien commander would make, because it required accepting death as a possibility. On the Defiant's bridge, radiation alarms were screaming. The ship's hull was being bombarded with deadly energy from the destroyed Zephyrian vessel, but Morrison ignored the warnings. He had more important things to worry about. "Sir, radiation levels are climbing," reported Lieutenant Pete Harris from the communications station. "Dr. Foster says we have maybe 30 minutes before serious health effects." Morrison nodded calmly. 30 minutes is enough. Amy, do you have a target?" Lieutenant Amy Brooks studied her tactical display through the static caused by the radiation. "Sir, I have 3 enemy cruisers moving into position. They think they have us trapped." "Show them how wrong they are." The USS Defiant burst from the debris field like a hunting beast. The Zephyrian ships were caught completely off guard, their weapons pointed in the wrong direction. The human ship's guns spoke once, twice, 3 times. 3 enemy cruisers became expanding clouds of gas and metal. Commander Zekthara watched the destruction from his flagship and felt his courage breaking. "They are not fighting us," he whispered to his crew. "They are hunting us like animals." The human ship moved with impossible speed and grace. It rolled and turned through space, avoiding enemy fire while delivering its own deadly shots. Every movement was precise, every action calculated for maximum effect. "Sir, we need to retreat," urged his tactical officer. "We cannot fight an enemy we cannot predict," but retreat was not an option. The fleet had been sent to destroy the human colony, and Admiral Kreshtar was determined to complete the mission. He had his reputation to consider, his honor to maintain. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel," he ordered. "Use everything we have." 250 Zephyrian ships opened fire at once. The space around the USS Defiant filled with deadly energy beams and explosive missiles. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The human ship vanished into the storm of weapons fire. For a moment, the Zephyrian crews thought they had finally succeeded. Then the Defiant emerged. From the other side of the barrage, its shields glowing but intact. "Impossible," breathed Admiral Kreshtar. "Nothing could survive that much firepower." But the USS Defiant had not just survived, it had used the enemy's own weapons against them. Captain Morrison had flown his ship through the barrage at precisely the right angle, using the Zephyrian shots to destroy other Zephyrian ships. 3 more enemy vessels died from friendly fire. On the human ship, the crew worked with desperate efficiency. They had taken damage from the massive attack, but they were still fighting. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, and the lights flickered as power systems struggled to maintain function. "Damage report," Morrison called out. "Forward shields at 40%, reported Lisa Kane. "Hull breach on deck 7, but it is sealed. We lost 2 crew members." Morrison felt a flash of pain at the news. 2 good people dead because he had chosen to fight instead of retreat, but he pushed the emotion aside. There would be time for grief later. Right now he had a battle to win. "Sir, incoming transmission from the enemy flagship," Pete Harris announced. "Put it through." Admiral Kreshtar's face appeared on the main screen. The alien commander looked tired and defeated, but he was still trying to maintain his dignity. "Human captain, you have fought well, but you cannot win. You are 1 ship against hundreds. Surrender now, and we will give you an honorable death." Morrison studied the alien's face for a long moment. He could see the fear hidden behind the formal words. This was not an offer of mercy. This was a plea for the nightmare to end. "Admiral, you came here to kill innocent people. Children, families, people who never did anything to hurt you. You expected them to be helpless. You found me instead." Morrison's voice was cold and hard. "I am giving you 1 chance to leave. Take your remaining ships and go home. Stay here, and I will destroy every one of you." Kreshtar's eyes widened with shock. "You are bluffing. You cannot possibly defeat our entire fleet." Morrison's smile was like winter ice. "Admiral, you have been fighting humans for 2 hours. Have we done anything predictable yet?" The transmission ended, and both commanders prepared for the final phase of the battle. The Zephyrians still had numerical superiority, but they were fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules. They were fighting something that seemed to grow stronger as the situation became more desperate. They were fighting humans, and they were beginning to understand why that word struck fear into hearts across the galaxy. The final hour of the battle would be remembered across the galaxy for generations to come. The USS Defiant, alone against impossible odds, had reduced the mighty Zephyrian fleet to scattered groups of terrified ships. What had begun as 300 vessels was now barely 40 survivors, and they were running. Captain Morrison stood on his damaged bridge, watching the enemy retreat on his flickering display screens. His ship was battered and bleeding atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches, but it was still fighting. Around him, his crew worked with the quiet determination that had made them legends. "Sir, enemy fleet is withdrawing to jump distance," reported Lieutenant Amy Brooks. Her tactical station was sparking from battle damage, but her voice remained steady. "Should we pursue?" Morrison considered the question. His ship was hurt, his crew was exhausted, and he had lost 8 good people in the fighting. The smart thing would be to let the aliens go and count their victory. But something inside him, something purely human, wanted to chase down every last enemy ship. No, he decided. Let them run. But make sure they remember what happened here. On the Zephyrian flagship Void Hunter, Admiral Kreshtar gave the order to retreat with a heavy heart. He was a proud warrior who had never fled from a battle, but he was also a practical commander who knew when he was beaten. The human ship had done something impossible, and he was not going to sacrifice more lives to his pride. All ships, prepare for emergency jump, he commanded. We are leaving this system immediately. Commander Zekthara looked at his admiral with confusion. Sir, we still outnumber them. We could regroup and attack again. Kreshtar's scarred face was grim. Commander, in my 83 battles, I have learned one important lesson. Never fight an enemy who enjoys dying more than you enjoy living. Humans are that enemy. The Zephyrian ships began charging their jump drives, preparing to flee into hyperspace. But before they could escape, a message came through from the human vessel. Captain Morrison's face appeared on every screen in the fleet. Zephyrian fleet, this is Captain Morrison of the USS Defiant. You came here to murder innocent families. You found something else instead. Take this message back to your people. Earth protects its own. Attack our colonies and you will face us. We do not negotiate with those who target civilians. We do not show mercy to those who threaten our children. Remember that. The transmission ended and the surviving Zephyrian ships jumped to hyperspace. They carried with them a story that would spread fear throughout their empire. The story of the day: a single human warship destroyed an entire fleet on the USS Defiant. The crew began the long process of damage control and rescue operations. Chief Engineer Danny Sullivan worked in the engine room, trying to keep the fusion reactor stable with half his systems destroyed. Chief, we have lost primary cooling on the port side, reported Technician Mary White. The reactor is running hot. Danny wiped sweat and blood from his forehead. He had been injured when a control panel exploded, but he refused to leave his post. Mary, reroute cooling through the secondary systems, and keep an eye on those radiation levels. We have been pushing this reactor beyond its limits for hours. In the medical bay, Dr. Helen Foster treated wounded crew members with quiet efficiency. The battle was over, but her work was just beginning. 15 people had been injured, and 8 had died. Each loss weighed on her heart like a stone. Doctor, how are they doing? Asked Captain Morrison as he entered the medical bay. Helen looked up from her patient. They will live, Captain, all of them. The dead died quickly, if that is any comfort. Morrison nodded sadly. It is some comfort. They died protecting 50,000 civilians. That means something. The captain made his way through the ship, checking on his crew and assessing the damage. Every department reported the same thing. They were hurt but functional. The USS Defiant would need major repairs, but it would fight again on the bridge. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Kane coordinated the rescue of survivors from destroyed Zephyrian ships. Even in victory, the humans followed their principles. They would not leave enemies to die in the cold vacuum of space. Sir, we have picked up 47 Zephyrian survivors, she reported to Morrison when he returned to the bridge. They are asking for medical treatment. Give it to them, Morrison ordered. We are not savages. The alien survivors were amazed by this mercy. In their culture, defeated enemies were left to die. But the humans treated their wounds and gave them food and shelter. It was another lesson in why humans were so dangerous. They could kill without hesitation when necessary, but they also showed compassion when the fighting was over. News of the battle reached Earth within days. The story of Captain Morrison and the USS Defiant became front-page news across human space. A single destroyer had faced 300 enemy ships and won. It was the kind of victory that inspired songs and legends, but the real impact was felt throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire issued new orders to all fleet commanders: avoid human space at all costs. Other alien races took note of what had happened at New Haven. The humans were no longer seen as weak newcomers to galactic politics. They were predators. Captain Morrison received a message from Earth Fleet Command offering him promotion to admiral. He turned it down. He preferred command of a single ship to the politics of high command. But he accepted a new assignment, captain of the USS Defiant Mark II. A bigger and more powerful vessel, the old Defiant was retired to a museum, but not before receiving the highest honors Earth could give. Visitors came from across human space to see the ship that had fought 300 enemies and one dot in the years that followed. The Battle of New Haven became a case study in military academies across the galaxy. Alien commanders studied human tactics, trying to understand how such a small force had achieved such a complete victory. The answer was simple but hard to accept. Humans did not fight just with weapons and ships. They fought with something that could not be measured or replicated. They fought with the absolute determination to protect what they loved, no matter the cost. They fought with the fury of a species that refused to kneel. The legend of human warfare had grown, and the galaxy would never underestimate Earth again.